Ako nga pala si Kyle, ang tagapagsalita ng Karapatan Southern Tagalog.
At ako naman po si Angelo Garcia, tagapagsalita ng YapJust. At kami ang magsisilbing tagapagpadaloy ninyo para sa ating komperensya ngayong umaga. Eksaktong 4 na buwan na ang nakalipas mula noong maganap ang Bloody Sunday. Isa sa pinakamalagim na mga araw sa kasaysayan ng Timog Katagalugan. 4 na buwan na mula nang maganap ang madugong operasyon ng mga puwersa ng AFP-PNP na nagresulta sa karumal-dumal na pagpatay sa 9 na aktivista, lider komunidad, katutubo at iligal na pang-aaresto at pagkulong sa 6 na iba pang mga tagapagtaguyod ng karapatang pantao. Lahat ng yan ay nangyari isang araw dito sa rehiyon ng Timog Katagalugan. 4 na buwan na rin ang ating paghahanap ng hustisya at pagsandig sa katotohanan.
Sangayon ako dyan, Angelo. Kaya't marapat lamang na hindi natin dapat ito kalimutan. Hindi natin dapat kalimutan ang Bloody Sunday. Hindi natin dapat kalimutan ang paggamit ng sistemang korte mismo upang paigtingin ng panunupil sa mga progresibong lider at kritiko ng gobyerno. At talaga namang tumatak ang nakagagalit na pangyayaring ito bilang rurok ng krimen ni Duterte at ng kanyang administrasyon laban sa sangkatauhan at sambayan ng Pilipino.
Kasabay nito ang walang tigil na paghangad ng hustisya at katarungan ng mga pamilya at kasama ng mga yumao nating lider. Hindi mabilang ng mga organisasyon, institusyon, mga pormasyon sa loob at labas ng bansa ang nagbigay ng pahayag ng pakikiramay at pagkondina sa naganap na pamamaslang at mga iligal na pang-aaresto at pagkulong.
Kaalinsabay rin ito ang pagbitaw ng pahayag ng Department of Justice na sila di umano ay magsasagawa rin ng investigasyon sa ilalim ng Administrative Order No. 35 Special Investigation Team upang mag-imbestiga hinggil sa naturang operasyon. Kami ay mahigpit na naninindigan na batay na rin sa aming mga nakalap na inisyal na impormasyon na magpapatunay na irregular ang paghahain ng search warrant at ang ilan dito ay mga depektibo. Tanim lamang ang di umano mga baril at granada sa kanilang mga tahanan at opisina kahit hindi lehitimo ang naging kanilang operasyon at hindi man lalaban ng mga biktima nila. Bagay ng paulit-ulit na bulalas ng mga berdugong PNP at AFP.
Kaya sa umagang ito, kasama natin ang ilang mga panauhin upang magbigay ng pahayag at kanilang pagtingin batay na rin sa kanilang personal na pag-e-examine sa mga kaso ng mga kinulong at maging sa katawan ng mga pinaslang. Kasama natin ngayong umaga si Dr. Raquel Fortun, isang forensic pathologist.
Kasama rin natin ngayong umaga si Attorney Jocelyn Dainla mula sa National Union of People's Lawyers at ang nagsilbing legal counsel para kay Nympha Lanzanas, isa sa mga inaresto at ikinulong na paralegal under Karapatan Southern Tagalog. Nasa loob din ng ating komperensya ang ilan sa mga kaanak ng mga biktima at mga tagapagsalita mula sa Defense Southern Tagalog Alliance.
Kaya hindi na po natin patatagalin pa, hayaan nating ipakilala ang unang magbabahagi, si Dr. Raquel Fortun, isang forensic pathologist. Personal niyang in-examine ang mga katawan ng 9 na biktima ng pamamaslang noong Bloody Sunday. Magandang umaga po, Doc.
Good morning. All right, I will now share my presentation.
Sige po.
Paki-host na lang si Doc.
Share screen, please.
All right.
Oops. All right, good morning.
Good morning po, Doc.
Dali. Okay na? All right. the 9 cases were referred to us. All of them died March 7, 2021. And actually very fortunate for us that all 9 were seen in my department, the Department of Pathology in the UP College of Medicine in Manila, our morgue there. And as you can see here, we got to see everyone. Mr. Emmanuel Asuncion was killed in Cavite. The spouses Ana Maris and Ariel Evangelista in Batangas. And then the others in Rizal. The brothers Abner and Edward Esto, cousins Puroy and Randy de la Cruz. And Marvin De Sigaw and Markley Macasno, all of them in Rizal. Okay, so all of these cases where it was arranged that they be brought to the UP College of Medicine morgue. And the autopsies were conducted from March 9 to 13. The bodies were brought 2 to 3 at a time on March 9, 11, 12, and 13. Typically at night because they're gunshot wounds and therefore I would require x-rays. And we have to thank the Department of Radiology of the Philippine General Hospital because these cases were accommodated. Without x-rays, you really wouldn't know if there are bullets and where they are, so where you will search. So that was the arrangement. And the examinations typically, again, were finished in 1 day. So these 9 were 8 males and 1 female. The youngest was 25, the oldest 50. They were all received embalmed, which is both good and bad in the sense that, well, you're not expecting too much decomposition, but it's still there. The problem is with all of these cases, the gunshot wounds, the bullet holes were altered and sutured. So they pose a lot of challenges, right? 1 was not autopsied at all. 8 were, I put quotation marks there, autopsied because the examinations ranged from a simple thoraco-abdominal or chest and abdomen incision with just a peek inside, you know, just an incision with hardly any examination internally. But the others, the organs were taken out, the chest and abdominal organs were taken out and randomly cut. Some of them, the head was not touched at all, so it was intact. So it's not really technically a full autopsy. Clothes, we asked for them, but unfortunately only 2 cases had clothes submitted with the body. 7, we have no idea what happened to the clothes. They're very important, especially if you've got bullets passing through the body. So they're additional documentation of what happened, right? So these are the ultimate difficult, challenging cases for a forensic pathologist. You did not get the bodies fresh. So there were embalming artifacts, some sense of an autopsy or an examination. Now, ideally, if it had been, the body had been already autopsied, there shouldn't be a need for a second, third examination because that first autopsy should have documented everything. I don't know to what extent that was done. In the first place, the examinations are really incompletely performed, and therefore I'm not really expecting much in terms of autopsy reports and documentation, but I'm still waiting. A lot of them, even though they were embalmed, showed also early decomposition at least. The skin color changes, there are blisters, the skin peels off, and so on. So they were not really in good shape. So very challenging. And at the same time, I will show you, all of them had multiple gunshot wounds. And gunshot wounds are very, very difficult to really examine, especially with all of these limitations, right? For each gunshot wound, this is my teaching slide. For each gunshot wound, you have to identify the entry. Did it exit? So if it did not exit, you just call it a penetrating gunshot wound. If it exited or it's through and through, you call it perforating. So you have to identify that. And everything that the bullet did from entry to exit is considered part of that one gunshot wound. So you have to identify, document where the bullet passed, and that would be the soft tissue lacerations, the fractures of the bone. They have to be there in your report. What was the muzzle to skin distance? How far was the gun from the target, the skin? This is the range of fire. Trajectory means how did the bullet pass through the body in the reference anatomic position. I'll show you what that is later. We have a diagram for that. And then if the bullet did not exit, where did it lodge? So it has to be recovered. It tells you a lot, right? But in this case, as I said, so many limitations, like for instance, the entry wounds or the bullet holes on the skin were all sutured and altered. So it's so difficult to even determine, is this entry or exit? Classically, you'd look for what we call an abrasion collar, which is a marker for an entry wound, but it's gone. Okay? Right. And this is part and parcel of a death investigation. And your objectives are many. You want to establish fact of death, identity of the deceased. What really was the cause of death? You know, you cannot just lump them all together and say multiple gunshot wounds. No. There are a lot of questions to ask. And then the manner of death, a lot of investigations in the Philippines are not even definitive about this. These are all homicides, the way we would classify it. And definitely, you are gathering evidence in the process. Right. I'll be showing you, just to summarize, the body diagram. So this is what a body diagram looks like. You've got an adult male here, standing straight up, facing forward with the palms forward. Okay, and I have marked in red dots what we think are the gunshot wounds, or at least the bullet holes that we identified. But I tell you, the actual bodies are much more complicated than this. This is such an oversimplified showing of the pertinent gunshot wounds. And this is the simplest that we found. Apparently here, you've got 2 holes in front, 2 holes on the back. Are these not just 2 perforating gunshot wounds of the trunk? Basically, the diagrams I'll be showing you exhibit similar injuries. The targets are mostly chest. Okay? Right, so this is one of the simplest. And that's it. This is likely to be just a 2 gunshot wounds, both perforating, and then we will now tell you what the internal injuries are. Basically, if you're shot in the chest, you've got vital organs there, the lungs, big blood vessels, the heart, and so on, and they can be deadly, right? So this is very simple. Sometimes you get 5 holes, and this leaves you asking, is there not a bullet inside the body? Because apparently one did not exit. And the problem is when I got them, meaning the bodies, they were already previously examined. So now this begs me to ask the question of, was a bullet recovered by the first examiner and where, right? And so on, right? So in this case, maybe he was shot 3 times with two perforating, one penetrating injury, but where is the bullet? So it's very difficult. Same here, apparent um, 2 holes in front, 1 in the back. And as I said, there's a possibility of 1 bullet remaining in the body. And remember, we're not even talking here of trajectory. Was he shot with the assailant in front and so on, right? So with this one. So everyone had at least 2 gunshot wounds. This is a more complicated finding of actually the lone female there having a really extensive injury of the left upper arm at the back. And please take note of the right hand. She had an injury of some fingers there. And you know, by location, this is what we would classify as defense type injuries. And that's another big question to ask. Can you reconstruct what was the position of the victim? Could she have reacted to the assault, the gunshot wound? As you know, that's instinctive. And I've been asked time and again, ito ba yung consistent sa mga nanlaban? Okay? But you know, when you answer this question of nanlaban ba siya or hindi, ang mga tanong dyan is how and with what, and really it boils down to really understanding how the shooting went. So shooting reconstruction yan, and this goes beyond just the body, right? In this case, again, gunshot wounds in the chest, deadly, and at the same time, he had what I believe to be 2 perforating or through and through gunshot wounds of the right upper extremity or arm, right? Now, what goes on in my mind is, what if these injuries were not caused by 4 bullets, 2 in the chest and then 2 in the right upper arm? What about the possibility of just 2 bullets passing through the arm and then re-entering the chest? Okay, so that's how you process things in forensic pathology, because anatomically it's feasible, it's possible. Like for instance, if you hold that arm against your chest in a defensive stance, easily you can argue that the 2 bullets, yes, could align with the 2 chest wounds, right? So that's a consideration. This one is more complicated and I think unusual in the sense that aside from the chest and arm gunshot wounds, this victim seems to have sustained also gunshot wounds of the lower extremity, the left lower extremity. And again, they appear to be through and through, 2 bullets through the left thigh and left lower leg. And again, what do they mean? Just examining the body, you may not be able to say much because we don't know the scene findings and others, the physical evidence, right? This is the only case where, aside from the chest wounds. There's an apparent single perforating gunshot wound through the head. And so it's forehead and mandible. I don't have my notes with me now to tell you exactly what is the trajectory. But again, same question. How was he shot with a trajectory like this? You have to check for totality of evidence. It's not just the body that will tell you all of these answers. Of the 9 cases, it's only Mr. Asuncion, which I have completely finished in the sense that we've had a conference with the family and the lawyers. I've released the report. The others, I have not really I have not completed yet. Okay, these are very, very difficult. As I said, I do apologize. Yes, it's been 4 months, but these cases are so challenging, right? And setting up meetings with people, especially the families, that's the first thing I'm going to do actually for cases, to make sure that the families know the findings first. All right, anyway, so for Mr. Emmanuel Asuncion, again, very difficult because he had a lot of injuries. As you can see here, likely he was shot several times in the chest and abdomen, but it has been so difficult to really identify which is entry, which is exit, where did this particular bullet go, and so on. Because as I said, all of these injuries were sutured. He also had other sutured sites, which most likely is not related to embalming. So what are they? And then belatedly, I received information that at some point the embalmer reportedly recovered a bullet. You know, what is the business of an embalmer recovering a bullet? This particular case actually would be the easiest because he was the only one not autopsied, not examined, right? So I got to finish this first, but I have a lot of questions regarding, how accurate my conclusions are. So this is just to show you, this is the report I released. It's 8 pages long. This is just the front page. And this is a typical forensic autopsy report that on the front page, you have a list of the most important findings. You see there 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's an opinion. The pathological diagnosis itemizes in terms of importance what killed him. So number 1, as I said here, he had multiple gunshot wounds of the trunk. And so, as I said, ideally for each bullet, you have to trace where it went from entry to exit, if any, or if it lodged somewhere. But for this particular case, 3 gunshot wounds were clustered in the anterior chest. I use the word probable a lot because I'm not really that sure. But my best analysis is the entries were probably in the anterior upper chest and the exits were in the left upper back. And then internally, again, I could not separate anymore the injuries produced by each bullet because they were just so close together. So there were a lot of lacerations, especially of the lungs. There was a lot of blood in the chest. So many fractures of the ribs. The trajectory here generally would be backward. And for all of my cases in this set of victims, I could not commit to range of fire. So I would call them indeterminate or probably distant. Okay, so there's another wound on the right chest. Again, probable entry in the right anterolateral or front side of the chest. Probable exit near the back. And I'm not too sure about this. Liver and right lung were injured. Again, so many fractures. There's another one in the abdomen. Again, I'm not too sure about the trajectory here, right? So it's probably left to right. But if you look at this list, which one killed him? You know, that's a standard question. Of all the gunshot wounds, which one was fatal? I would say the 3 gunshot wounds in the front upper chest. That would be number 1A. What else? So we do a complete autopsy and we don't just zoom in on what's the obvious. We found out that his heart was big, particularly the left ventricle, and this is consistent with hypertension. Some thickening of the arteries, but bottom line is, and also a fatty liver. Bottom line is, if he had not been shot, he would not have died. Okay, so that's clear. Now, as for the opinion on the bottom part of that first page, this is very simplistic and just a summary that he was 50 years old, allegedly shot at his workplace by police and other state operatives, along with 8 others in different places on March 7, 2021. Embalmed remains were autopsied by us on March 12. Findings of multiple gunshot wounds, injuries of the internal organs, and so on, and the manner is homicide. So this is just the front page. All the details of the findings, you find them in the body of the report. And so just to give you a better picture, again, so this is a front sheet where we put a pathologic diagnosis, the opinion I read to you, we summarize the case, what is the cause, what is the manner of death, and all the other details are in the body of the report. So that's what makes the report long. For these cases, external and internal injuries actually take up a lot of space, so many pages. And the other thing that adds to the length of the report would be the different organ systems, because we really do check everything. All of them, we did not find any evidence of medical intervention, meaning they were not attended to, no needle puncture wounds, and so on and so forth. Okay, all right. So for all of these cases, I have a lot of questions. I wish I could tell you exactly what happened, but remember, this is where forensic pathology comes in. We focus on the body, but at the same time, our findings are correlated to other aspects of the investigation. Like, for instance, for each of these shootings, was there a crime scene investigation? The scene will tell you a lot. If the bullet went out, where did it lodge? Where was it recovered? Then that's how you reconstruct the shooting. If casings were found, that roughly tells you where the shooter was. Was there blood spatter? Some of the cases I saw what I would call projectile injuries. It's like small, solid pieces of material embedded in the body, the skin, and so on. So I'm thinking, I don't think there was an explosion, but maybe the bullets ricocheted, they hit some other hard surface and then re-entered as small fragments. So I don't know. I cannot tell, I cannot explain that. So I will just report them as projectile injuries. Where witness accounts taken into consideration, and it's not just the shooter, of course, that you will ask. The shooters will say, nanlaban eh, but is that enough to kill people? And we take it at face value that that's what happened. So this is routine. And the autopsy findings, yes, I was able to examine the body. That's what I want. But at the same time, there were others before me. So again, what documentation did they do? What were their findings? I would be very much interested in their reports, whatever is contained there. So I'm waiting for that. shooting cases, you leave a lot of evidence, and this is where ballistics or firearms identification comes in. Again, I'm only limited to what I found in the body. All of these materials have to be put in the context of, referencing them, matching them against the firearms of those who were involved. And ultimately, bottom line, is there going to be a shooting reconstruction? These are all homicides. Gunshot wounds, gunfire shootings, and in a first world country, all of them are meticulously examined, investigated, especially if you have state agents involved. So these are my questions, and I want to know if we have a chance of getting answers for this, because I would like to sit down and put in my findings and try to help the investigation. It has been asked in one case if they were going to still do an exhumation and to examine the body. And I said, it's not really necessary. All you have to do is to sit down with me because we have adequate documentation. I tell you, our pathology residents are excellent in documenting. For each of these cases, we have hundreds and hundreds of digital photographs. And that's one reason why I am taking so long. I have to review everything. I have not seen also the microscopic slides for these cases, but I promise I will get on to really finalizing the report soon. And lastly, let me just extend our sympathies to the kin and colleagues of those who died. They were 9, but I cannot. I have this feeling that there was really a 10th victim. Mr. Dandy Miguel, 35 years old, was one of those coordinating the autopsies, sending the bodies over to us, coordinating with the families and so on. And 3 weeks after, so this was March 28th, he himself was killed. And he himself was brought to us, and he is our autopsy number 18 for 2021. So think about that. The one big question I ask is, who would have wanted him killed? He was shot, unlike the others, where state agents were clearly involved. For Mr. Miguel, he was shot on the road on his motorbike. And again, for him and everyone killed, each case deserves a homicide investigation, which is actually very basic, especially in a first world country. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat din po. Muli ay nasaksihan natin ang ulat ni Dr. Fortun tungkol sa kanyang pag-examine sa mga katawan ng mga naging biktima ng Bloody Sunday. Kitang-kita naman natin sa ulat ni Dr. Fortun na may kahirapan sa pag-examine dahil sa kawalan ng sapat na ebidensya at partisipasyon mula sa state forces na unang nag-autopsy, na unang nag-examine sa mga katawan ng biktima.
Yan. Tsaka dagdag ko rin na na based din dun sa mga nakuhang nating mga datos from Doc Fortune. So sobrang litaw rin yung kakulangan din talaga ng, for example, ng investigation, magkaroon man lang ng crime scene investigation na until now wala pa rin tayong hawak na document from yung mga namatay, yung mga pinaslang. Yun po. So we para po sa mga kasama nating media, we will entertain questions siguro after a few speakers. Then we'll just finish the program lang din. Okay? So yun, Siguro po para po sa susunod po na parte, na bahagi ng ating programa, meron lang po kami i-play din na video. Wait lang.
Para muling balikan ang konteksto ng Bloody Sunday, atin pong panoorin ang video na inihanda natin.
Ito po ay news mula sa Al Jazeera company. So, ito po.
It was the worst day for activists in the Philippines in recent years. On March 7, a series of operations conducted by state forces resulted in the deaths of 9 activists in several parts of the southern Luzon region. Rosalinda Salundaga says she was asleep with her husband Melvin Dasigao and their children when police forced their way into their home. Melvin's hands, she says, was behind his head. It was an act of surrender, she says, but Melvin was still shot several times.
May baril ba ang asawa mo?
They say we have weapons. We don't even have money for food. We are dependent on aid after our house was devastated by a typhoon last December. They stripped us of our humanity and our dignity. Have you no heart, no conscience? You kill us like animals because we join rallies?
Mark Lee Bacasno was a friend and colleague of Melvin, was also killed. He lived across the street. People here tell us it was around 4:30 in the morning when they heard a group of armed men force their way inside Mark Lee's house. They say they heard his family pushed out of the house before Mark Lee was shot several times right here. Their home is abandoned now. And in another part of Rizal province, Puroy and Pulong de la Cruz were cousins who advocated for the rights of indigenous peoples. They were killed the same way. Among those killed too were the couple Chay Lemita Evangelista and Ariel Evangelista from Batangas province. Both were killed by police just meters away from their son. And on Sunday, an entire community grieved the death of Manny Asuncion, who was a known labor rights organizer for many years. The police say all of the victims were killed because they resisted arrest, and that led to what they call an armed encounter. But rights groups here say this narrative has long been used by police since its so-called drug war began in 2016. The government has ordered an investigation into the killings.
Pero yung order na presidente na kill, kill, kill.
The order of the president was correct. Kill, kill, kill. If your enemy has a gun, must you wait to be shot and killed? It is not a violation under international humanitarian law. If a soldier fires at an armed communist, but is there a distinction between activists and rebels? Of course there is.
Human rights activists say those who died had one thing in common. They were freedom fighters who were outspoken critics of the government. Jamela Lindogan, Al Jazeera, Manila.
Muli nasaksihan po natin ang isang report mula sa Al Jazeera para muli nating balikan kung ano yung naganap noong Bloody Sunday. Ngayon naman po, pagpapatuloy po natin ang ating komperensya ngayong umaga sa pahayag naman ng isa nating kasamang abogado na naging legal counsel ni Nanay Nim Falanzanas, isa sa mga inaresto noong Bloody Sunday. Kasama po natin ngayon si Attorney Jocelyn De Ingla.
Maraming salamat, John. Good morning sa inyong lahat. Good morning, Kyle. At magbabahagi ako ng updates sa kasong People of the Philippines versus Nim Falanzanas na kasalukuyang dinidinig sa Regional Trial Court ng Calamba Branch 37. Ang ifinay laban kay Nanay Nimfa ay violations ng Republic Act 9516 at Republic Act 10591 or illegal possession of firearms at illegal possession of explosives. Nagsimula na ang presentasyon ng ebidensya ng prosecution. Sa unang pagdinig, iniharap nila ang EOD o yung Explosive Ordnance Division Officer o bomb technician kung kanino di umano isinumite yung fragmentation hand grenade na nakuha daw sa bahay ni Nanay Nympha noong March 7, 2021. Dinala po ng bomb technician na ito yung granada sa korte para makita ng hukom at ng depensa. Pero ang witness na ito ay walang personal knowledge ng mga sirkunstansya kung saan di umano nasamsam o nakita yung fragmentation hand grenade sa bahay daw ni Nanay Nympha. Sabi niya lang ito ay isinumite sa kanya para kunin yung tinatawag na chemical filler sa loob at kumuha ng sample para makumpirma kung totoong nga ang granada ito. At batay sa prosecution, nagsagawa na ng chemical examination ang PNP Crime Lab na nagkukumpirma na isa nga itong fragmentation hand grenade. Nakatakdang magpatuloy ang pagdinig sa Biyernes, July 9, kung saan naman ihaharap ang ibang arresting at seizing officers, isa sa mga seizing officers na kasama doon sa operasyon na pumunta doon sa bahay ni Nanay Nympha sa Calamba. Kung babalikan natin yung implementasyon ng 2 search warrants laban sa kanya, ay isinagawa ng mga alagad ng, hindi mabilang pero napakarami daw nito, alagad ng Calamba City Police Station, Laguna Provincial Police Station, at Batangas Provincial Police Station, Angono Municipal Police Station, Morong Municipal Police Station, at Rizal Provincial Police Office sa supervision ni Police Colonel Lito Patay na hepe ng Criminal Investigation and Detection Group, National Capital Region Firearms Unit, Firearms Unit ng R4A at sa pangungunan ni Police Major Adrian Cayabyab. So nakikita dito sa partisipasyon ng iba't ibang mga unit na to sa buong Southern Tagalog o Calabarzon yung pagproyekto nila kay Nanay Nympha bilang isa dun sa mga aktivistang pinaparatangan nilang miyembro ng gun running syndicate na di umano ay nagsasagawa ng hindi lang gun running kundi robbery, extortion activities at mga gun for hire activities sa rehiyon. Bukas kami nakatakdang mag-file ng omnibus motion to quash search warrants, suppress evidence, dismiss the cases with alternative prayer for ocular inspection and evidentiary hearing. Nakuha natin kamakailan ang kopya ng records ng search warrant application na naglalaman ng 52-page transcript of stenographic records ng hearing noong March 3 before Judge Jason Zapanta, affidavit of applicant Police Lieutenant Venerando Mendoza, affidavit of informant Errol James Bustamante, and affidavit of Police Sergeant Eugenio Ilagan. Kalakip nitong application din yung sketch ng komunidad ni Nanay Nympha, mapa raw na nagmula sa City Assessor's Office at mga litrato na di umano ay kuha ng mga nagsagawa ng surveillance na police kasama informant nila, surveillance o casing sa bahay ni Nanay Nympha noong Pebrero. I will not go into detail, but the grounds we will invoke or we are invoking in this motion are the following. First, the address of the place search was not covered by search warrant number 31076 and search warrant number 31077. Second, there are clear and convincing evidence that the police and their informant asserted deliberate falsehoods during the application for the search warrants. And third, probable cause was not established in view of 1, lack of searching questions on the part of the issuing judge, 2, material inconsistencies and unexplained gaps in the narrative, and 3, lack of personal knowledge of the police of the commission of the alleged crimes by Nanay Nympha. Kung babalikan po natin, ang search warrants na isinerve kay Nanay Nympha noong March 7 ay bahagi ng bulto ng mga applications na natanggap ng Regional Trial Court of Manila, Office of the Executive Judge, 63 applications for the Office of the Court Administrator sa kanya report sa Supreme Court Chief Justice noong March 12. Sabi niya, sa dami daw, unusually high number of the applications, these were farmed out to different vice executive judges of the RTC of Manila. At yung inisyo kay Nanay Nympha ay kasama doon sa 15 applications that were raffled or given to Judge Zapanta, and which he heard in 2 days. Bukod sa ilang detalye, walang kinaiba yung naratibo at ebidensya sa application na ito based doon sa records na nakuha natin. Walang kinaiba doon sa mga iba pang in-issue ng bulto o serially. Sa kaso ng mga aktivista kagaya ng Bacolod 57, Tondo 3, Paco 2, at Human Rights Day 7 ng 2020. Nandiyan na yung paratang na aktivistang nahuli ay miyembro ng gun running syndicate, yung peking informante na di umano ay personal na nakakita ng mga firearms, ammunition at explosives na binibenta o kaya ay dinideliver niya para sa gun running syndicate na ito. And these witnesses, of course, are all planted at mayroong mga di magkakatugmang material inconsistencies, mga detalye no, sa kanilang mga ebidensya at sirkumstansya. Gusto kong bigyan diin na kung babasahin ng search warrant records, napakahirap i-verify ng identity ng informante sa kaso ni Nanay Nympha. Ganoon na rin sa iba. Mahirap i-verify kung totoo bang tao to, kung tunay ba, yung pangalan na sinasabi nila. Kasi sa kaso nung kay Nanay Nympha, hindi sinama sa records yung kopya ng ID niya, hindi niya man lang sinabi kung saan siya sa Tondo nakatira. Sabi niya lang yung barangay. Ang paratam niya na siya ay kapitbahay daw ni Nanay Nympha. Hindi niya naman napatunayan dahil hindi niya alam yung address niya sa Calamba. Hindi niya alam yung pangalan ng may-ari ng bahay. Hindi niya alam yung pangalan ng taong, hindi niya maalala yung pangalan ng taong nagpakilala sa kanya doon sa nagsama sa kanya raw doon sa bahay ni Nanay Nympha para bumili ng baril. At contrary to human experience, yung naratibo, no, kung saan natunton yung bahay ni Nanay Nympha at na-identify bilang source ng loose firearms. Sa kaso na ito, etong informante, nagtanong-tanong lang daw sa mga kapitbahay kung saan siya ay isang dayo. Nagtanong-tanong lang siya kung saan makakabili ng barel. Parang bibili lang sa sari-sari store. No? So ganun ka-ridiculous, ganun ka-absurdo yung mga alegasyon sa search warrant application na ito. Sa tulong ng pamilya ni Nanay Nympha, sama natin ngayon si Madel, yung kanyang anak, at ng Karapatan Southern Tagalog, nakakalap tayo ng ebidensya para pasinungalingan yung mga alegasyon dito sa kanilang application. Kasama na yung di umanong ginawa nilang surveillance o casing sa bahay ni Nanay Nympha. Dito rin sa kasong ito, makikita natin yung mga gaps sa procedural rules at safeguards tungkol sa proseso ng search and seizure from start to finish. Kitang-kita ito sa kaso ni Nanay Nympha. Una, yung napakadaling iwas-iwas, no exception, no, yung compelling reasons para mag-apply yung mga pulis mula sa malayong jurisdiction sa Manila o sa Quezon City para sa search warrants. Ang daling i-invoke na exception nito nang hindi nila pinapatunayan. Kapansin-pansin, dito sa kaso ni Nanay Nympha na doon sa mga affidavits at depositions ng pulis at kanilang informant, na walang nabanggit na anumang compelling reason. Usually ito yung iniiwasan doon nilang mag-leak yung informasyon, pero wala silang iniahapag na ebidensya para dito. Yet granted pa rin yung application. Pangalawa, yung presensya ng mga barangay officials, hindi sapat na safeguard para masigurong hindi nataniman na ebidensya, no? Yung bahay na sinesearch. Tawag nga sa operasyon na ito, Gestapo o shock troop style, kasi alam natin na mayroong mga pumapasok ng mga alagad ng pulis at nagtatanim, saka lang nila tatawagin yung mga barangay officials pagkatapos na. Kaya hindi nila nasasaksihan yung bahay o yung opisina, itsura nito bago sila dumating. Kaya yung sinusubaybayan natin, yung promulgation ng rules ukol sa paggamit ng body cam na sabi ng Supreme Court ay malapit na nitong ilabas. Alam natin na marami ding paraan para ito ay maikutan, no, ng mga pulis. Kaya sinusubaybayan natin yan. At panghuli, yung access sa search warrant records, hindi agad nakukuha. Sa kaso ni Nanay Nympha, nakulong siya March 7, nahuli siya March 7, nakuha lang natin mula sa branch 174, noon lang June 21. Pagkatapos nito, hindi naman tayo agad nakapag-file ng motion to quash kasi syempre kailangan pa natin siya sa atin at maghanap, kumalap ng ebidensya para pasinungalingan yung mga alegasyon dito. Kaya gusto kong i-take itong pagkakataon para ulitin yung panawagan sa Korte Suprema, lalo na kay Chief Justice Dismundo, na siguraduhin, no, tiyakin na mapapangalagaan yung karapatang pantao nasa ilalim ng konstitusyon, nasa ilalim ng pandaigdigang batas para sa karapatang pantao laban sa unreasonable search and seizure. At nabanggit ko mga pagkakataon from start to finish, from the issuance, during the implementation, and post-search, maaari pang maglagay ng mga safeguards para matiyak na hindi na magkakaroon ng pang-abuso sa karapatan kagaya na nangyari kay Nanay Nympha. So yun lamang po from my end. Maraming salamat po sa pagkakataon at magandang umaga sa inyo lahat.
Maraming salamat din po, Attorney Jos, sa inyong very insightful na pagpapaliwanag hinggil sa development ng legal proceedings sa case ni Nanay Nympha. And nakita naman natin na very very ridiculous and absurd yung mga sinasabi nitong mga alleged mga spies, mga informants di umano, at biglang naipasok yung gun running. Nakakatawa isipin, pero totoo po itong nangyayari. At ayun, syempre we are very hopeful na sa mga susunod na panahon din ay ma-dismiss din yung case ni Nanay Nympha.
Tama. And kita rin naman natin dun sa ibinahagi ni Attorney na napaka-inconsistent ng mga paratang, at kung kilala natin si Nanay Nympha, hindi naman lingid sa kaalaman ng mga taga-Timog Katagalugan, na nagsilbi talaga siyang nanay ng iba't ibang progresibong organisasyon dito sa ating rehiyon. Kaya mas lumilinaw yung pangangailangan na palakasin pa natin yung panawagan para palayain si Nanay Nympha, palayain lahat ng mga bilanggong politikal dito sa Pilipinas.
Okay, para sa next, magpi-play muna ako ng isang video ginawa ng Free Nympha Lanzanas movement para natula, and yan.
Oh, anak ko! Nariyan ka pala. Kumusta ang araw mo? Kumusta ka? Sana'y ayos ka lang. Kung akong tatanungin, ngayong araw, mga gawa-gawang kaso'y inihatol sa akin. Ikinulong sa likod ng mga rehas upang patahimikin. Nakakagalit. Nanduduwag sila. Pagdating sa isang bunganga na isinisigaw ang katotohanan, kaya pilit binubusalan. Nakakalungkot. At aaminin kong, oo, nakakatakot. Walang kasiguraduhan ang aking paglaya. Kung bukas ba maaari ba kitang makita? O sa makalawa, hindi pa rin ba kitang makakasama? O anak ko, tandaan mo parati na kahit anong mangyari, lagi akong nasa iyong tabi. O anak ko, ang paglabang ito ay para sa'yo. Pantay na karapatan, tunay na kasarinlan, isang kinabukasan na nais kong makamtan. O anak ko, huwag kang mangangamba. Andito lang si Mama. At kahit anong gawin nila, wala nang mas matapang pa sa isang ina na lumalaban at nag-aaruga.
Right? Ayan. Ayun po ang tula na ginawa ng Free Nympha Lanzanas Network. And next, maririnig naman natin ang mensahe mula sa anak ni Nanay Nympha na si Ate Madel Lanzanas. Naririto po ba kayo sa loob ng Zoom conference?
Yes po.
Natin po magbigay ng pahayag.
Ayun po. Ayun nga. Namimiss na namin yung mama ko. Namimiss na din siya ng mga amo niya. ay nahirap para sa amin hanggang ngayon, bali 4 months na nandun siya sa kulungan. Kahit paulit-ulit niya sinasabing okay lang siya, sa boses niya parang hindi. Kasi syempre, pandemic ngayon, tapos senior na siya. Hindi namin alam kung anong meron dun sa loob. Madami siyang bagay na hindi na nagagawa. Ayun, naniniwala kami kasama si Attorney Josa na mapapadali yung lakad ng kaso niya, na sana makalaya na siya ng mas maaga pa. Ay.
Ayan, maraming salamat po Ate Madeline Masanas. At syempre kami rin po mula rin po sa mga nakasama ni Nanay Nympha before. Sobrang miss na talaga namin si Nanay Nympha. And ayun, balikan ko rin ang konsepto ng kanina hinggil sa loose firearms, no? Very ironic, no, na parang ang PNP sa pagtatanim nila ng mga ganitong loose firearms, parang tila ba gusto nila armasan yung mga mamamayan. Ganon sa pamamagitan ng pagtatanim nila ng mga ebidensya, which will result sa mga gasgas nilang mga narratives na nanlaban di umano, tapos magresulta sa mga vigilante killings na sila mismo yung gumagawa, which is very unlawful syempre and illegal, and we have very much maraming mga evidences na nagpapatunay sa mga susunod pang mga case na i-hear din, kasabay din ng pagulong ng kaso ni Nanay Nympha, na ang patutunguhan din nito ay ang pagbabasura sa lahat ng mga kaso na fabricated laban sa mga aktivista, sa mga nagtataguyod ng mga karapatang pantao.
Ngayon naman po, ipagpapatuloy natin ang ating press conference sa isa ulit na ulat mula sa isa nating kasamang abogado dito sa ating press conference para naman sa developments tungkol sa Administrative Order number 35. Nandito na po ba si Attorney De Mesa para sa kanyang ulat?
Mukhang wala yata sa Zoom conference si Attorney De Mesa. Okay. Wala ata sa Zoom. So ngayon, siguro sa bahaging ito, maaari na tayong tumungo sa panghuling tagapagsalita bago tayo mag-entertain ng media questions. Tinatawagan po natin ang spokesperson ng Defense Southern Tagalog para sa 4 months ng Bloody Sunday. Charm?
Ayan, isang magandang umaga. No? Naririnig po ako, malinaw.
Parang medyo choppy ka ata, Charm. Ayan, hello. Ayan. Bago tayo tubungo kay Charm Aranan para makapagbahagi o kahit ma-culminate yung mga ideas at sa mga panawagan natin ngayong 4 months ng Bloody Sunday, magpe-present muna tayo ng isang cultural performance mula sa Panday Sining UPLB.
Paglaho ng usok sa larangang digma, lilitaw ang lunti ng damo at tatangayin ng sariwa, amoy ng pulbura at damo. Pagkatapos ng digma ay payapa, pagtigil ng gulo at mga labanan, sugatan ay aalagaan, at mga biyani ay bararangalan, pinaslang ating tatandaan. Pagkatapos ng digma ay paghilo, mga manlulubig ay pusihin, ang bawat krimen nila ay lilitisin, hindi sa pagkagahaman nila tayo'y di mangangailangang mag-alsa. Pagkatapos ng digma ay hustisya, ang mga magsinta muling makikita, mag-anak muling magsasama, at mula sa buwan tayo'y papanday ng sariwa at bagong buhay. Pagkatapos ng digma ay sagana, at kung ang bayan muling lumigin, ang laya natin ay tangkang gawin, hindi na muli mahalila, kapit sa sandat ay di manghihina. Sa digma ay sisilangan, payapa.
Ayan, nasaksihan natin ang kultural na pagtatanghal mula sa Panday Sining, UPLB. Ngayong press conference natin, ngayong umaga, ay nasaksihan muli natin ang pagkundina ng iba't ibang organisasyon at iba't ibang individual sa nangyaring massacre noong Bloody Sunday. At kung matatandaan natin, no, nung naganap ang Bloody Sunday, idinahilan din ni...
Kamusta kayo? Ay ako'y mapapadpad sa yung kaharian.
Ayan, nagkakaroon lang tayo ng ilang technical difficulties, ganyan talaga siguro pag live. Pero kagaya ng nasabi ko, dahil nakita muli natin ang pagkundina ng iba't ibang organisasyon at individual sa nangyari sa Bloody Sunday, mahalagang alalahanin din natin ang paniningil sa administrasyon ni Duterte dahil sa massacre na nagganap. Naaalala natin na idinahilan pa noon ni Presidential Spokesperson Harry Roque na alinsunod naman daw sa international humanitarian law, yung order ni Duterte na kill, kill, kill. Ngunit malinaw na kung tunay na ayon talaga sa IHL ang mga utos ng Pangulo, hindi daranak ang dugo ng mga sibilyan. Sibilyan at hindi armado ang mga pinatay noong Bloody Sunday. Kaya mainam na palakasin natin ang panawagan para sila ibigyang hustisya at palayain na yung mga inaresto noong Bloody Sunday. Ngayon naman po Ipagpapatuloy natin ang ating press conference sa pahayag ng Defend Southern Tagalog spokesperson. Charm?
Ayan, hello. Naririnig po ako?
Yes, narinig kami namin.
Yes, Charm.
Ayun, no. Isang magandang umaga, no. Maganda at mapagpalayang umaga sa lahat ng kasama natin dito sa Zoom, no. Kay Dr. Toon, kay Attorney Dainla at sa mga kasamahan sa media, no, na naririto ngayong araw. No. Narinig natin kanina yung updates, no, hinggil doon sa ginawang autopsies doon sa siyam na biktima ng Bloody Sunday killings, no, at gayon din yung mga update, no, sa kaso particular ni Nanay Nympha Lanzanas na isa naman sa anim na inaresto noong Bloody Sunday o noong March 7, 2021. Ano. Actually, no, napakahirap na muling balikan, no, at marinig, no, now from the doctor who conducted the autopsies, no, kung saan-saan yung mga tama nung ating mga naging kasama, no, kung papaano na maaaring sinubukan pa nilang kumbaga may defense injuries na sinasabi, and at the same time, no, doon sa binahagi naman ni attorney na doon sa paghahanap natin ng hustisya, no, makikita natin na very absurd yung claims ng mga surveillance units, intelligence officers na ginagamit para i-surveillance, no, o magkaroon kumbaga ng tungtungan yung mga isinasampang search warrants laban sa mga aktivista, no. Actually, this is not different from what happened to the Human Rights Day 7, no, in the National Capital Region on December 10, 2020, no. At ganun din, no, nagpapatuloy yung mga ganitong atake sa mga aktivista, sa mga mamamayang Pilipino, no. In the Southern Tagalog region, no, since the Bloody Sunday massacre and raids and killings that happened on March 7, no, nagtuloy-tuloy din yung mga atake laban sa mga progresibo, aktivista, no, at mga miyembro ng iba't ibang mga progresibong organisasyon sa ating rehiyon, no. Andiyan yung pagpaslang, no, extrajudicial killing, no, kay Dandy Miguel, no, leader manggagawa. Ganun din, no, on May 5, May 6, no, we also received reports, no, that another 4 were arrested in parts of Rizal and Quezon, no. So nagpapatuloy yung mga atake laban sa mga mamamayang aktivista, no. And we would like to point out, no, na doon 4 months has passed, no, pero isa sa mga kumbaga challenges nga na hinaharap ng ating legal team at ng families ng mga biktima ng Bloody Sunday ay yung kawalan ng kooperasyon ng PNP, no. Karapatan Southern Tagalog, no, has requested, no, for the cooperation of the PNP to furnish us with copies of search warrant applications, no, at iba pang mga dokumento na makakatulong para doon sa pag-alam pa natin ano ba yung mga iba pang circumstances. We were also asking them for copies of their autopsy reports, no, para sana malaman kung ano ba yung nalaman nila, no. But to no avail, no, they have not cooperated with us. They have not responded to our emails, and despite all our efforts na to coordinate with them, ano, ay nananatiling hindi pa rin natin nakakamit ang hustisya at napakabagal pa din nung proseso ng ating sinasagawa sa ngayon. Kaya gano'n na lang rin, ano, yung kumbaga hinagpis sa bahagi ng mga pamilya dahil napakatagal, no, parang kailan ba natin makakamit yung hustisya na ating pinakaasam-asam, no. And very recently, no, Investigate PH has released its report, no, that killings on activists follows the patterns of Tokhang-style killings in the anti-drug war.
Okay. Mukhang nagkakaroon ng technical difficulties ang spokesperson ng Defense Southern Tagalog na si Charm. So yun, babalikan natin yung mga sinabi ni Charm kanina, no. Well, firstly, on March 7, nagkaroon ng wave of raids sa mga laban sa mga activists na nagresult nga sa 9 killings and 6 illegal arrests and detention sa mga activists, mga human rights workers, mga at iba pang mga nagtataguyod ng mga karapatang pantao natin. And then on May 6, we received verified reports na that there will be another wave of raids in Southern Tagalog region at hindi tayo nagkamali doon. Nagkaroon ng ilang mga illegal na pag-aresto sa pamamagitan pa rin ng paghahain ng mga dubious search warrants laban sa mga activists, sa mga progressive community leaders around Southern Tagalog. And nito lamang, July 4, ay nagkaroon din kami ng reports from ng verified reports actually that there will be another wave. Bali pang third wave na po ito, and this will be on July 10. So natatakot ulit kami, syempre kaming mga activists, mga human rights workers at iba pang mga community leaders ng Southern Tagalog na meron na naman at magkakaroon na naman ng bagong wave ng mga ganitong klaseng mga tokhang style raids against activists, and this comes after PNP chief Eleazar na nagkaroon siya ng pronouncement on July 2 na napaigtingin daw nila yung campaign against loose firearms dahil nga raw mag-election time, dumarami na mga krimen. Sino nga ba naman itong mga tinataniman nila ng mga firearms and mga explosives? Hindi ba't mga activists din naman? So mga miyembro ng mga progressive leaders. So on July 2 nag-pronounce ng gano'n, and July 4 we received reports that there will be another wave of tokhang style raids, SEMPO ng police and military, combined police and military operations on that will be on July 10. So we are very nag-aalala rin kami at naghahanda rin para sa araw na ito.
Thank you, Kyle. I think sa puntong ito ay pwede na tayong tumanggap ng mga katanungan sa mga kasama nating media dito sa press conference. Kung meron po kayong katanungan, pwede kayong mag-raise ng hand para ma-unmute natin kayo. Or kung gusto nyo, pwede rin pong mag-chat sa ating chat box. Sige, I think Lian Buwan is raising her hand. May katanungan po ba tayo? Pwede po tayo mag-unmute.
Good morning, Lian Buwan from Rappler. I think meron dapat lawyer na mag-update on AO35. That's my first question. Baka Charm can also. Kasi sabi ni Doc Fortune kanina, every one of the 9 deserve a homicide investigation. Has there been any semblance of a homicide investigation dun sa mga state forces na nag-execute ng search? And I believe there was a finding by the Batangas IAS kina Chai and Ariel sa admin. So any update to that? Any update on kung may narating na ba ang any admin or criminal investigation, if any? Yun lang muna. Thank you.
Hello, Charm. Na-catch up ba natin yung question? I think wait lang. Sorry, Miss Lian. Wait lang po.
Ayun, no. Siguro as of now, no, as per the updates on the criminal cases, no, or to be filed, no. Ayun, no, as I've mentioned earlier, yung nagiging problema nga natin, specifically for the killings, ay yung nagiging bara din ay yung non-cooperation ng PNP units, no, in our investigation. Though there has been an AO35 task force, no, kahit na may ganun na, no, ay nagiging mabagal pa rin yung kanilang pagtugon. Actually, hindi mabagal. It's actually none at all. No, napakabagal. No, at para sana maisampa itong criminal charges against the perpetrators, kakailanganin yung legal basis na makikita sana doon sa documents na kinakailangang makuha mula sa perpetrators mismo. So as of now, no, Defense Southern Tagalog, together with our legal counsel and the families of the victims of the Blood Sunday Massacre, no, tuloy-tuloy yung ating pagkalampag sa mga opisina, no, ng perpetrators para ibigay sa atin yung mga kinauukulang kaso, dokumento, no, para maisampa at gumulong itong kaso. Of course, we are also working hand in hand with the AO35 na binuo sa mga provincial level, no, na siyang nangangasiwa doon sa investigation ng DOJ, but even that, no, is progressing very slowly. So 4 na buwan na pero wala pang significant na pag-abante doon sa mga kaso.
Charm, dun sa admin, meron bang update nung kinachay and meron bang ibang case dun sa 7 others kung merong admin finding yung IAS either provincial or krami level?
Ayun, as of now, wala pa kaming wala pa talagang conclusive reports na natatapos doon sa investigations na ginagawa. So we cannot really give an update on that yet. Kasi yun, napakabagal talaga nung proseso at kumbaga kahit kami inip na din sa pag-aantay at pag-alam kung ano na nga ba yung itinatakbo nung nagiging investigation nila.
Sorry, last na lang. Siyempre, I mean, we can expect the police to really resist yung cooperation.
Yun.
But what has your
for the other
experience?
cases, yung ocular inspections, yun, ocular inspections have already been done in some of the crime scenes, no. So ayun, yun so far yung mga nagawa na nung investigation team na mga binuo.
Sino yung nag-ocular charm? AO35?
Yes. They've had NBI with them, no. Tapos na yung ballistic investigation for the case of Manny Asuncion.
Just kay Manny, or how many have there been ocular inspections?
Yes, so far we can confirm, we can kay Manny Asuncion pa lang yung nagkakaroon ng ganitong klaseng ballistic investigation.
Thank you so much. That's all for me. Salamat, Charm.
Maraming salamat din po. Kung meron pa po tayong ilang katanungan, pwede po tayong mag-raise ng hand para ma-entertain ng ating mga tagapagsalita ngayong press conference. Meron pa po bang gustong magpaabot ng katanungan? Ayan. Sabi ni Charm dito sa ating chat box, yung for Manny Asuncion pala, ballistic investigation was done together with the city prosecutor. If you have more questions po, kahit sino from our media, pwede po tayong mag-raise ng hand.
Baka po sa mga kasama nating media dyan, meron po kayong question for Doc Fortune? Regarding the initial findings of the autopsy result?
Sige. May nag-chat, no? From Bianca Aniago, from Business World. Have you submitted your concerns to the ICC po? Prosecutor Bensuda had called to submit info from human rights victims last June 25.
Siguro i-acknowledge din natin yung presence ni Ms. Casey Andrews, spokesperson ng Bayan sa Tagalog. I think she can answer the question of Ms. Bianca Aniago.
Hello? Yan, sira yata tong camera ko. Anyway, dun sa question ni Ms. Bianca, we're planning to submit our documents and the parts of the investigation then, including yung mga fact sheets and other affidavits of the families of the victims sa International Criminal Court. So aside from the AO35 na nakakita talaga tayo no ng opportunity dito sa ICC para din i-support no na magkaroon ng investigation sa situation ng Philippines at maisama no yung case ng Bloody Sunday victims at mai-file dun sa ICC. Pero as of now, we were still on the process ng paghahanda rin sa families and the witnesses ng Bloody Sunday, and looking forward tayo na immediately din may ayos natin yung mga ipapasa nating mga documents and affidavits sa ICC para makatulong doon sa pagtutulak pa na masimulan na yung investigation ng prosecution.
All right. Okay, sige po.
Miss Lian, are you raising your hand again po? Sige, go lang po.
Ako na lang ulit. Kay Doc Fortune, Doc, kasi you said in your presentation kanina, may sutures, it made a lot of things very difficult. Ideally, what would have been the state po sana to make it less challenging for you to examine, and yung ganong state po ba, state of decomposition, may suture na, ano ba yun? Normal yun na nangyayari kapag may ganito? Or have there been cases na dumating naman sa inyo ng maayos yung mga katawan, lalo na at kayo naman talaga yung preferred sanang mag-examine ng mga pamilya ng mga grupo?
Well, in a first world setting where you have a death investigation system in place, you have a shooting, what happens is you freeze everything. Nobody does anything. Iwanan mo. Kung patay na, iwanan mo. Kasi kung nasaan yung bangkay, ano yung position niya, that helps a lot. So crime scene, preserve the crime scene. But this is the Philippines. Imagine what has happened was, and what is happening is, patay na bangkay, bubuhatin, dadalhin sa ospital. That's crazy. So somebody really has to make a decision, pronounce the body there, and say, this is a crime scene, and then you freeze it. Okay? And then automatically, papasok na yung investigators. So that means you have a CSI, and then yung doktor na part doon, they would be forensic pathologists, or at least trained. And then sa amin is, yun, you document the body, you pronounce the body dead. How long has the body been dead? Kasama yan. Tapos, evidence at the scene must be preserved. In a first world setting, yung kamay nga nilalagay sa paper bags. Okay? And that is to preserve evidence on the hands and to leave no question of na-contaminate yan. Like halimbawa, shooting to nanlaban, nagpaputok daw ng barel. You really should try and check for gunshot residues. And when I say gunshot residues, it's not paraffin testing. But again, this is the Philippines. I've seen some of the bodies having residues ng wax. So ang suspecha ko, ay siguro nag-paraffin testing to. Okay, that's crazy. So this is the ultimate forensic pathology challenge. Actually, what we're getting. You have embalmed previously examined bodies, some decomposing, and naku, ang hirap, multiple gunshot wounds. Ang hirap-hirap sagutin yung mga tanong that way.
Thanks, Doc. Follow up lang, sabi nga ni Charm, si Manny Asuncion is the only one of the 9 na merong ocular inspection na yung DOJ. Sa pag-examine niyo po ba ng body, siya na rin yung at this point may pinaka-conclusive report. Hindi naman conclusive, pero mas maganda yung report sa kanya. That's why probably maybe the DOJ thought, siya na yung unahin natin sa ocular inspection.
I really don't know what's happening. Apparently, special data yung AO35 na yan. Yun ang tanong kasi is, bakit merong specific persons, victims ba, na applicable lang yan? When automatically, kahit sino yung biktima, kahit sino yung alleged offender mo, automatic yan, pinatay. This is a violent death. So I don't know. And maybe nauna ko din siyang i-print at i-release at makipag-meet with the family and the lawyers kasi I received a request from the prosecutor in Cavite for a copy of the autopsy report. So nauna siya. So I really don't know what's happening. I heard nagkaroon nga daw ng NBI investigation sa scene. I don't know what else can you still do. But kung ako yan, malapit lang yung scene, I would go there too. That's basic. If a CSI was done, dinocument dapat nila. In this case, mukhang kinaladkad pa yata yung body, tinanggal sa scene. Why would you do that? Lalo pa kung state agent ka, state forces ka, hindi ba alam mo kung ano yung tama? Tapos CSI, routine yan. The photos, the sketch, nasaan? The blood spatter analysis, the searching for the bullets, the searching for the casings. I don't think that's done. So, but I'm waiting. Ano ang meron?
Thanks, Doc. Kay Charm na lang siguro, sabi mo nga may prosecutor, sabi rin na Doc, nag-request yung prosecutor. Is there a complaint filed before the prosecutor o proactiveness na lang to nung fiscal sa lugar nila, kaya nagre-request ng mga copy?
No. So this is part of the AO35 investigation.
Bali, dagdagan ko na lang din, Miss Lian. Hello. Linawin lang din natin, dagdagan natin yung sa AO35 na in the event na meron ng ongoing, na nangyaring investigation, ballistic investigation para kay Kamani Asuncion. Pero up to now, since inaantay din ng special investigation team yung autopsy reports, since inaantay rin ng AO35 special investigation team yung reports regarding the autopsy, wala pang complaint na naifa-file sa prosecution. So vital din talaga yung role ni Doc Fortune dahil dun sa autopsy na isinagawa dun sa siyam na namatay. Then as far as we are informed by the family of Chay and Ariel, nagpasa na yung provincial prosecutor ng kanyang initial very preliminary findings regarding dun sa investigation na inilunsad nila, based pa lang din dun sa mga documents na meron, like the spot report, the search warrants na ginamit or in-implement sa mag-asawang Chay at Ariel. Pero other than that, nagkaroon ng effort yung legal counsel ng family to conduct ocular inspection dun sa kanilang bahay, dun sa Kalayo na Sugbu, Batangas. Pero ngayon, hindi pa rin informed ang family ni Chay and Ariel kung ano ba yung nilaman ng report at preliminary findings ng provincial prosecutor ng Batangas.
Sorry, last na lang talaga. Kay Doc Fortune, Doc, compared to the other cases of violent deaths you've handled recently, ito ba yung parang pinakamaraming alterations na dumating sa inyo?
Actually, this is typical. Ang medyo unusual lang dito sa kaso na to, I like it that I got all 9. Okay? Why? Kasi frustrating din yung hindi mo nakikita yung buong picture. Like for instance, let me just refresh your memory a little. If you go back, yung kay Mr. Randall Echanis of last year, remember, 2 silang napatay noon. I've always wanted to know ano yung findings dun sa isa pang victim. Kasi kasama yan sa isang insidente, but I never got to see that body. Very sketchy yung 1-page autopsy report na lumabas. But in this case, I saw all 9. And makikita mo rin kung may pattern. Like for instance, in this case, all of them had shots in the chest. So they were really shot to be killed and so on. So But is this any different from the previous cases? My practice in the Philippines has been a very unusual one compared to, say, a forensic pathologist in another country. As I said earlier, in another country, you wouldn't see them like this. Tapos ang challenges pa, hindi pa ganun ka state of the art yung aming morgue. But I tell you, that's the best place I can bring these bodies to already in the Philippines. So that's why if I get referrals, I tell them, bring them to me. Bring them to the UP College of Medicine, PGH. At least ako, meron akong access to x-rays. Indispensable yung mga x-rays na yan because otherwise you wouldn't know if there are bullets. And I get these cases na previously autopsied na completely missed yung mga bala. Why? Because the medical legal officers don't do x-rays.
Thank you po. Yun na lang talaga for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you po, Liam Buwan from
Hello, Kyle. Hello, Kyle. Oo. Mag-clarify lang ako no, regarding dun sa question ni Ms. Bianca Anyago kanina. So technically, with the consultation din sa ating lawyers, technically hindi part ng ICC yung Bloody Sunday because yung nilabas na conclusion ni Prosecutor Bensuda ay mas particular sa drug war. So the cases na part ng Bloody Sunday should be filed instead sa United Nations Committee on Human Rights. Thank you.
Okay, salamat po sa paglilinaw, Ms. Casey Cruz. I think nagtataas kanina ng kamay yung Manila Today. May mga questions po ba kayo?
Ay, hello.
Hello.
Hello, yan. Sarah ng Manila Today. Ano lang, yung siguro yung kay Nanay Nympha. Ay, tama. Yung question ko lang, kasi di ba mayroong yung mga, may arrest na mga nangyari nung time na yun. Siguro baka si Attorney Dela po yung makasagot na, yung sa kung gun run, parang ano din po yung case niya po ba ay parang connected din siya dun sa mga ibang inaresto nung araw na yun dun sa Southern Tagalog or sa iba pang case na parang kagaya nung kung babalikan natin yung nangyari sa HRD 7 na parang kung dun sa evidence parang salaysay ng witness na pinagsama-sama yung parang pinagduktong sila. So may ganun din po bang yung sa kay Nanay Nympha?
Yes. As far as we can tell from the search warrant records, particularly the transcript of stenographic notes, yes, these are all related. Kagaya ito nung nangyari sa Human Rights Day 7, kung saan yung informant ay nag-deliver daw sa 4 na lugar ng mga firearms, explosives, and ammunitions. Tinahi doon sa di umanong casing na isinagawa nila. Although we don't have information as to how the surveillance was conducted on the other respondents doon sa search warrant applications na kinarap ni Judge Zapanta. Bakit ko nasabi na as far as we can tell from the search warrant records, sabi doon sa bandang huling part, noong deposition ni Police Lieutenant Venerando Mendoza, tinanong siya kung naaalala niya anong oras nakauwi yung informant doon sa kanyang bahay, pagkagaling nila doon sa surveillance. Hindi niya na maalala, sabi niya gabi na raw. Di tinanong siya bakit, kasi pagod na pagod daw siya, ang dami raw nilang surveillance na ginawa noong araw na yon. At nag-comment si Judge na, ay oo nga pala, ikaw rin yung doon sa iba pang applications. Sige, pag-usapan natin mamaya yan. To that effect, parang ganun na ikaw din pala yung interviewin ko mamaya. Nabanggit doon sa PSN. That's why I say na ganito, na related talaga yung mga applications. At least doon sa nakita namin na kasabay noong na dininig sa sala ni Judge Zapanta noong March 3, 2021. Kasi remember, he heard 15 applications. 15 yung ibinigay sa kanya, inassign sa kanya, of the 63 received by the Manila RTC that time. At doon sa affidavit nung police applicant tsaka nung witness niya, mayroon daw 5 informants na di umano ni-recruit nung gun running syndicate. Pero yung 5 informants na yon, bukod pa dun sa informant na naka-assign talaga kay Nanay Nympha, ay hindi sinalang sa hearing noong March 3 sa kaso ni Nanay Nympha. So we don't know kung ano yung nilalaman ng testimonya nila. Pero yun lang na kita natin na mayroong 5 informants in relation to the other cases that were filed by these police officers.
Okay po. Dagdag na lang po. Doon po sa transcript na nakuha niya, pwede po bang ilan po yung nasa gun running syndicate na sinabi doon sa
hindi binanggit kung ilan silang involved. In fact, during the deposition, tinanong yung police kung sino, ano ba itong grupo na to? Yun yung tanong eh. Ano itong grupo na to? Tapos yung sagot ng 2 pulis sa magkaibang pagkakataon, yung isa sabi niya, wala naman pong na-cite. Yung sagot ng pangalawa, wala naman pong grupo. So, ang gulo, parang, di ba nga, ang dahilan kung bakit kayo nagsagawa ng surveillance ay para obserbahan yung isang di umanong miyembro ng grupo na ito. Bakit nyo ngayon sinasabi na wala naman pong grupo? Napaka-sketchy, napaka-amorphous ng mga allegations pertaining to this particular criminal group. Criminal group yung description nila sa kanilang affidavit. So we don't know. We have no information on that. Even the police, I think, don't know that.
Okay po. Thank you po. Yun po.
Yan. Maraming salamat po sa Manila Today. Are there any questions po from sa mga kasama nating media na naririto sa Zoom conference? Meron pa ba tayong mga follow-up questions?
Ayan, meron tayong question from Felipe Cheng from Alter Media at UPLD Perspective. Kay Dr. Fortune po, nakikipag-coordinate po ba ang mga nagpa-embalms na nauna sa mga request niyo for their initial reports?
Nakikipag-coordinate ba yung mga nag-embalm?
Ang mga
Sorry.
nag-embalsam po na nauna sa requests niyo for your initial reports.
Okay, yung embalmers, actually they should not be involved in the examination findings. I'd be more interested in the doctor's findings. Kaya lang, meron akong narinig na isang account na yung isang embalmer daw ay may nakuhang bala sa katawan at ibinigay sa relative. Right? So I thought that is worth pursuing. At least ma-verify. I have an idea saan kaya hiniwa ito, saan kaya kinuha. But that leaves a lot of questions. Like kung embalmer ka, anong claim mo na mandukot ng bala? Okay? Tapos isa pa, actually, bodies are evidence. So, wala bang in charge dito sa mga katawan na ito? Ano ang pwedeng gawin, ano ang hindi pwedeng gawin? I am happy that ultimately napunta sa amin yung mga katawan for examination. And kami naman, ang hinihingi namin, minimum lang consent for autopsy. But really, somebody has to be in charge. All the way from the scene, yung body ay ebidensya, hindi yan dapat sinisira. Madalas nga, ang nauuna pa yung embalming kesa yung autopsy ng medico legal. But right now, I'd be very, very interested on the findings of the doctors more than the embalmers.
Salamat po, Dr. Fortune. Salamat din sa katanungan from Felipe Cheng ng Alter Media at UPLD Perspective. Kung meron pong dagdag na katanungan ng mga kasama natin from media, Pwede pa rin po tayong magpaabot, mag-raise lamang tayo ng hand o mag-chat sa ating chat box. May gusto pa po bang humabol?
Siguro last
Okay, sige. JPEG. Ayan, hello. Ayan, gusto ko lang din idagdag na kay Doc Fortune. Yung question kasi sa kanya nga, if nakikipag-coordinate yung embalmer, ano. So tama yung sinasabi ni Doc na hindi naman supposedly involved yung embalmer. Pero for example din, last May, we requested with the PNP and SOCO to get to have the copies of the autopsy report, no, yung naunang autopsy na ginawa nila or postmortem report, para din doon nga maging reference ni Doc Fortune dun sa kanyang re-autopsy. Nag-try na rin kami to appeal with the Commission on Human Rights, no, to help the families na makakuha nitong mga kopya nito. Pero up until now ay wala kaming nakukuhang sagot mula dun sa concerned offices at kung nasan ba itong mga autopsy report na ito. So doon pa lang blind spot na din yun na makakatulong sana for magkaroon na mas conclusive na findings si Doc Fortune. Pero yun, hindi kami nakakukuha pa rin ng response, lalo din para dun sa families na gusto rin namang mabasa yung initial reports nung naunang autopsy na ginawa ng SOCO Crime Lab.
Thank you, Casey from Bayan, Southern Tagalog. Meron ding question dito sa chat box from Bianca naman. Do you think po requiring police officers to wear body-worn cameras is enough to prevent these killings? Ayan. Yung tanong daw ay for Attorney Josa.
Yes. Hi, Bianca. I don't think it's enough requiring the police officers to wear body cams during the service or implementation of search warrants is enough. Because there are many ways by which they can circumvent the rules that we're imagining will be implemented in this regard. For example, they can stage the scene or they can just turn it on kapag andyan na yung eksena, naayos na nila at na-set up na kung saan itatanim yung ebidensya. That's why we said that there are equally important safeguards that must be placed during the issuance or prior to the issuance of the search warrants. For example, yung nabanggit ko kanina, yung sa validation na lang ng identity ng mga informants na yan, who are such shady characters, walang nakakaalam kung sino sila, hindi nga alam kung totoong tao sila. Tapos yung probable cause requirement under the Constitution is not being met because the issuing judge, by reason perhaps of the sheer number of applications that they received, this time 15 applications in 2 days, napakarami nun, hindi nagagawa yung tinatawag na probing and exhaustive interrogation or questioning of the witnesses. So, mga ganon, ang dami pang mga kailangang balikan sa mga rules at i-reiterate sa mga issuing judges para masigurado talaga na napapangalagaan yung karapatang pantao ng mga respondents sa search warrant applications. And of course, it's also important, probably most important, no, to have a leader, no, that does not encourage law enforcers to kill, and to not differentiate between civilians, and the unarmed and the unarmed and armed, mga ganon, no. So that's the most important thing.
Thank you, Attorney Josa. Thank you rin, Bianca, para sa katanungan. Ngayon naman, nag-raise din ng hand si Blue Summer. Meron po ba kayong question?
Hi, good evening. It's Josie for Cadilla, and my question is related to what Dr. Fortune said a while ago in her presentation regarding the autopsy of the 9 people killed in Southern Tagalog. I agree with her that the commonality between the 9 cases are the chest injuries sustained by all 9 victims, right? But there was one thing that caught my attention. I think it was Manny Asuncion. You said that aside from gunshot injuries, Manny's ribs were fractured. Was it because of he was tortured before he was killed, or it was because of the implosion inside the body of the bullets that caused the fractures?
Those rib fractures we saw, even...
Or was it nung kinaladkad siya, sabi niyo? Because I've heard in the Karapatan report that he was like kinaladkad palabas, or even inside the center where he was sleeping with his wife.
The rib fracture seen in all of these victims actually were all related to the gunshot wounds. And it's not that difficult to check actually. If you correlate the external skin findings with the internal injuries and so on. Actually, for these cases where I found a lot of sutured lesions, for example, in the chest, the rib fractures underneath were better indicators of, real injury, whether entry or exit, than the other things. And that's why I had to really analyze, go back to basic anatomy. What is this I'm saying? And but the answer to your question is, yes, we do check if there were injuries not gunfire related. But so far, we did not find anything
unusual or
could be from blunt force, for example, blunt trauma. There may have been indicators of... That's why you have to correlate everything. Like for instance, I saw some pictures of the scene where there could have been drag marks and so on. But so did I find injuries related to that? We did not. No blunt force, but I did find some abrasions at the back near the pelvis, but they look like they're post-mortem. So maybe that would be consistent with the account of dragging the body.
Dragging, yeah.
Dead by then. So these are nuances that forensic pathology is supposed to help you with.
Yeah,
I have a lot of limitations. I'm sorry about that. I will tell you if I don't know, if I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing that struck me about Manny. Of all the 9 people killed at the same time, right? He's the only one who has fractures. I don't know if you found fractures in some of the bodies of the victims.
The presentation I gave for the 8 actually is not complete. I only showed the final report of Manny Asuncion because that's what I have right now. The others, I have them, but I have not released them. And yes, just like Mr. Asuncion, the others also had fractures, but they're not necessarily related to the gunfire.
Yeah.
A lot of fractures, even the ones with the gunshot wounds to the extremities, especially the arms. We took note of all of those fractures, and again, it's a blessing that we had x-rays for that, because that's very good documentation as well, the images. So even the others also had fractures related to the gunfire.
Okay, thank you. I guess my other well, it's for everyone who are currently involved in activities in Southern Tagalog. Is there a possibility for you guys to, like Kyle inform us that there's an intel report that July 10, the police or the military will launch another third wave of arrests, and we don't know what's gonna happen. So is there a possibility for you all to sidestep for a bit, like days, whatever, until I'm just you know, I'm just concerned for everyone in the Philippines right now who are, you know, human rights defenders and defending human rights, activists, lawyers, workers.
I think Defend Southern Tagalog can answer that question.
Ayan.
Yeah, just, you know, just to let this go for a while, and then see what's. I just want to see what the military and the police will react if,
And,
like, they did not
of
arrest
course, no, given
someone
that there
or killed
is-
someone.
Yes. No, given that there is a threat of another police military operations in the region, of course, different progressive organizations in the Southern Tagalog region are on high alert, and we have interim steps to ensure the safety of our members, and we have our protocols set naman po to safeguard our members and ourselves. But of course, we call on the citizens, we call on everyone to be on high alert as well, and to support the activists, to support us, human rights defenders in this battle. And of course, in this way, we expose as well this impending attacks, and hopefully we be able to and of course we pray for the best that these attacks do not push through, and they do not victimize even more citizens, even more activists, or even more members of progressive organizations. So ayun po, syempre alam namin na merong threat sa aming buhay. Alam namin na merong mga pagkakataon nakakapagdulot sa amin ng pagamba, nakakapagdulot ng takot. Malinaw naman po yun ng mga mamamayan ng katagulugan. In the face of intensifying attacks, we will continue to fight. We will continue to rise against tyranny. We will continue to defend Southern Tagalog.
Okay.
Salamat.
Well, ingat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last question po from Felipa Cheng for Dr. Fortune. Docs, ang question ay, sa pag-present niyo po sa injuries ni Chai Evangelista, meron siyang malaking injury sa left arm at sa daliri, mga injuries na hindi po nakita sa katawan ng ibang male victims. Sabi niyo po ay classified siya as defense type injury. Bakit po mas severe yung kanyang injuries na non-gunshot related? Salamat po. Ito yung question from Felipa Cheng.
Yeah. In her case, again, that was a very simplified diagrammatic presentation. I do recall she had a big open wound on one upper arm. And yung mga ganyan, mahirap nang sabihin exactly ano sila. Kasi distorted. There was an attempt to repair it. Sinuture siya. Alright? So, you keep an open mind. What is this about? But considering that she was shot several times, then you'd think this is also a gunshot wound. And it's still consistent. Sometimes, kung high velocity yung bala, malaki, tapos tinamaan ka sa soft tissue na hindi papasok, then you sometimes get these huge lacerations pa rin. And then on x-ray, sometimes we get small fragments, apparently metallic fragments. Again, this would be consistent with gunfire. So in her case, I do remember that she had a huge injury in one arm and then pati yung sa kamay niya. And as I said earlier, in forensic pathology by location, you would call them defense type. Kasi nga instinctively, pag binabaril ka, you put up your arms, your hands to protect your head, your face. Yung pinakita kong legs na injury din kanina, anong ibig sabihin? No, it's not necessary that he was shot while standing. Again, you have to reconstruct what could have happened. Because sometimes even leg injuries are defense type injuries. You're down on the back and you flex your knees, your pelvis, etc. to also parang nag-fetal position ka. So it's very hard to say outright what they mean. But at the minimum, the autopsy report will attempt to document ano yung nakita namin. Right? So yun ang mas maganda talaga kasi yung findings mo ng autopsy, ilalagay mo dun sa konteksto ng findings ng iba. And unfortunately, right now, yun yung nakaka-frustrate kasi I really don't know much about what happened here. In a first world setting, that is how forensic pathology contributes to the process of the investigation.
Thank you po, Dr. Fortune. Thank you ulit, Felipe Cheng, for the question. Last call po para sa ating mga kasamahan from media. Baka meron po kayong karagdagang question. Sige. Kung wala naman po na karagdagang question, nais po namin muling tawagan ang spokesperson ng Defense Southern Tagalog, si Charma Ranan, para sa huling mensahe bilang formal na pagtatapos ng ating press conference ngayong umaga.
Ayun, muli po ay mapagpalayang umaga, patanghali sa ating lahat. Of course, we would like to thank Dr. Fortuno, Attorney Josa, and our friends from the media na nagpaunlak sa atin na makasama natin sila ngayong umagang ito para ibahagi yung update sa kaso ng mga biktima ng Bloody Sunday dito sa Southern Tagalog region. No, it has been 4 months since the Bloody Sunday massacre happened. No, it has been 4 months of no justice. No, it has been a very agonizing 4 months for the family and friends of the victims. No, and it has been 4 months of a very, very slow investigation, no, and seeking for justice. No, 4 na buwan na halos ang lumipas, no, kaya naman sa bahagi po ng mga iba't ibang organisasyon at sa bahagi ng pamilya ng mga biktima ng Southern Tagalog 9, no, Calabarzon 9, no, at kasama rin na biktima, no, si Pangulong Dandy Miguel at yung iba pa ring na aresto, no, prior to the March 7 operations, no. We are pushing for the A5 task force and the DOJ, no, to expedite the process, to expedite the investigations for justice to be served. No, they should fully cooperate with us, no, fully cooperate with our legal team, legal counsel, no, and with the families of the victims para mahanap talaga yung hustisya. If they are really sincere in seeking for justice for the victims, they would cooperate. They would give us the documents that we need. They would furnish us with police reports, autopsy reports, and all of these documents that are essential for finding justice, no, for seeking justice, no. Additionally, no, we have received reports that July 10 would be another day for police and military operations to happen in the Southern Tagalog region, no. Pero makikita natin, no, na tuloy-tuloy yung mga atake, no. Very recently, no, PNP Chief Eleazar had a statement, no, that there would be an intensified campaign against loose firearms, no. He had this statement on July 2, no, and sinasabi kasi ganito nga yung ginagawa sa mga aktivista tinataniman ng mga barel, bala, explosives at sasabihin na nanlaban or ito ay mga miyembro ng mga gun running syndicates So it is all the more reason for us to be on high alert. It is all the more reason for us to be more vigilant. It is all the more reason for activists and progressive organizations of Southern Tagalog to continue to fight Alam po namin na merong banta sa aming buhay. Alam namin that being an activist right now is like having a death sentence on your shoulders, Pero malinaw sa mga mamamayan ng Timog Katagalugan na magpapatuloy ang aming laban at sana ay suportahan kami ng malawak na hanay ng mga mamamayang Pilipino, at ganun din our friends from the media to help us as we continuously expose, as we continuously give updates on the human rights situation of the Southern.
All right. Thank you, Charm. Siguro may pahabol din na last question from our live, from the comments of Defense Southern Tagalog live, Facebook Live, from Miss Carol Aralio. Her question is, can legislation address these problems, crime scene investigation, and can victims and ordinary citizens ask for proper procedures to be followed by authorities with regards to the cases of violent deaths? For example, shouldn't documents related to the police operations be made available without red tape to relatives of victims and their lawyers? Shouldn't the IBP and other associations of lawyers advocate reforms in this regard? Maybe Attorney Josa can answer this question po.
Regarding the question of legislation, it can definitely be addressed by legislation. Although may mga existing units naman ng CSI sa Philippine National Police, may mga gaps, maraming gaps sa procedure na pwede pang ma-address by instituting reforms and instituting offices that will look into and exact accountability from police officers who fail in their duty to make sure that the crime scene will be processed properly and will not be contaminated. Ang dami talagang problema pagdating dyan. In fact, sa ibang cases namin, may mga experts na rin mismo na nagsasabi na these standards that are being followed here in the Philippines are not at par with international standards. Iba yung standards nila, sinabi na nga ni Doc for too many times, na hindi talaga papasa. So it's time that we elevate the standards that are being followed here in the Philippines to what is considered internationally acceptable. And as to the question, can victims and ordinary citizens ask for proper procedures to be followed by authorities? Definitely. This can be part of your campaign, Bayan Southern Tagalog and Karapatan. Kasi nasaksihan natin sa experience ng mga biktima ng Bloody Sunday na lahat ng irregularities prior to the search and even post-search, kahit na yung kanilang refusal to coordinate and to cooperate, lahat yan part ng problemang ito. And definitely you can advocate for amendments sa mga rules. At in fact, nabanggit na namin to sa mga communications namin sa Supreme Court because they too can address some of these concerns as the body na may kapangyarihan sa ilalim ng Constitution na mag-promulgate ng rules affecting constitutional rights, particularly the right to life. Yung documents relating to police operations definitely should be made available without red tape to relatives of the victims and their lawyers. In fact, sa mismong rules ng Philippine National Police, when there are deaths resulting from operations, matter of course dapat yung investigation. Dapat ginagawa talaga nila yan. And unfortunately, we know that they exonerate themselves in this process. So yes, we should clamor, we should ask for more transparency in this process. And in the same way that we are asking for search warrant application records to be made available to the accused right away, dapat ganun din dito.
Thank you po, Attorney Josa, for answering that final question sa press conference natin ngayong umaga. Diyan po nagtatapos ang ating press conference. Muli, 4 na buwan na simula noong naganap ang Bloody Sunday, ngunit hanggang ngayon ay wala pa ring hustisya. Ngunit hindi diyan natatapos ang ating kampanya upang igiit ang hustisya para sa mga pinaslang at mga iligal na inaresto noong March 7. Magpapatuloy ang ating kampanya to defend human rights and defend Southern Tagalog.
Kasabay din ng paghingi natin ng hustisya para sa lahat ng mga biktima ng Bloody Sunday Massacre and mga biktima ng mga illegal na pag-aresto at pagkulong, ay kasabay din ng pagpapanawagan para sa pananagutan para sa PNP, sa AFP at sa mismong administrasyon ni Duterte sa kanyang krimen laban sa sangkatauhan at sa buong sambayan ng Pilipinong nakikibaka para sa kanilang mga demokratikong mga karapatan. Kaya muli po, ako po si Kyle Salgado mula po sa Karapatan Southern Tagalog.
At ako naman po si Angela Garcia mula sa Youth Advocates for Peace with Justice. Maraming salamat po sa pakikiisa ninyo sa press conference upang alalahanin ang mga biktima ng Bloody Sunday. 4 na buwan ang nakalipas ngunit wala pa rin hustisya. Magsama-sama po tayo upang igiit, upang palakasin ang kampanya para sa hustisya, para sa karapatang pantao, at para sa kapakanan ng mamamayang Pilipino. Maraming salamat po at mag-ingat po tayong lahat.
At muli po, may panawagan pong social media rally 4 p.m. for hashtag 4 months no justice, hashtag never forget Bloody Sunday, hashtag Defense Southern Tagalog Region. Makaisa po tayo sa social media rally ngayong pong hapon ng alas 4 ng hapon. Muli po, maraming salamat po mula po sa Karapatan Southern Tagalog, mula po sa Defense Southern Tagalog. Nagpapasalamat po kami sa lahat po ng tagapakinig, nanood ng ating live at ng press conference po ngayong umaga. Muli po, maraming salamat po.